Number 1, Primetime Will. How am I doing? Number 2, I need your help on smoking meat. Number 3, Tim Tebow is benefiting from privilege, but is it white privilege? It's the Will Cain Podcast on FOX News Podcast. You can download, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you get your audio entertainment, Apple, Spotify, and of course, at FOX News Podcast. How am I doing? I told you a little bit earlier in the week that I was just going to try to be real with you. That's the minimum bar that I had to cross this week as I host FOX News Primetime, 7 o'clock Eastern, every night of the past week. So how am I doing? I'll give you my grades. Monday night, I think I came out of the gates and probably gave you a B- show. A little bit of jitters, a little bit of nervousness, all that, as I talked about with you previously, is just part of the external stimuli that pulls you out of being who you are. Tuesday night, I got my feet under me. I went on the attack. I got after Ben Crump. I think I ramped it up to maybe an A-, and the ratings showed. We doubled up Aaron Burnett on CNN. We grew in the demo. That's just a little biz lingo. Don't worry about that. But I almost got to the 5 hit. I'd say on Wednesday night, I made a mistake. I made a mistake that a lot of people make. In fact, I gave my son a little soccer pep talk on the tail end of doing my Wednesday night show. I settled in. I didn't take a cut for the fences on back-to-back nights. Nobody cares how you did. They only care how you did for me lately. So I'm coming to you today on Thursday afternoon. This podcast will post on Friday morning, and I will have my 4th Thursday night show finished and completed by the time you are listening. So what I want to do with you today is work through my argument. I want to take you behind the scenes. I want to give you the rough draft, the true first take of what it's like to put together a primetime show, my monologue, where my mind is currently sitting. You can go back and watch the Thursday night show, see how it all came out. And I want to know how you think I'm doing. Did I cross that low bar of being real? Did I give you something deeper, more interesting to think about? Did I have fun? Did you? At Will Cain on Twitter, see Will Cain on Instagram, Will Cain on Facebook. So story number 1, my rough draft. I don't know exactly how this will take form tonight, but I'm thinking something like this. Today, President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris signed their COVID-19 Anti-Hate Crime Act. This is a hate crime law targeting anti-Asian hate. Now, in the process of passing this new law, the Biden administration and many members of the media quote a statistic that anti-Asian hate is up 164%. That number comes from a study produced out of the University of California at San Bernardino. It's the one study that almost every single media article relies upon when talking about anti-Asian hate. And I did something unique that I'm not sure many other members of the mainstream media have done. I clicked through and read the article. I clicked through and looked at the study. It's pretty fascinating. First of all, the study reveals as you go through data on anti-Asian hate that the vast, vast majority of violent incidences are coming from 2 places, New York City and California. Now, I think a logical response would be, well, Will, that's where the largest Asian American populations reside, in New York and California. And you would be somewhat correct, although Asian Americans have a diaspora all across this great country. But the fact that the vast majority of violent incidences are taking place in New York or California allows you to dig even deeper into the data. Who are the victims and who are the criminals behind this anti-Asian hate? First, the media, the Democratic Party, and the article from UC San Bernardino want you to believe that anti-Asian hate is connected to a rise in white supremacy. They want you to believe that anti-Asian hate is connected to Donald Trump. Why do I know this? Once again, because I clicked through on the article. Inside the research packet, there's some absurd charts that shows a line graph of Asian hate crime over time rising, and superimposed on that rising line on the line graph are the dates of various tweets published by U.S. Senator Tom Cotton, by former President of the United States, Donald Trump. There are lines superimposed when President Trump referred to COVID-19 as the China virus, when Tom Cotton referred to COVID-19 as the Wuhan virus. And the implication, and it is an implication, there's certainly no correlation and zero evidence for a causational effect between the tweets of Republican congressmen and President Donald Trump and the rise of anti-Asian hate. But it's clear that's what the study hoped to conclude. And it's clear that that's what the media, who probably declined to actually read the research, did conclude. And it's clear that's what the Democratic Party and the Biden administration wants you to conclude. The only incident that anyone ever talks about when it comes to anti-Asian hate is the shooting of 8 people at a spa in Atlanta, Georgia, the majority of whom were Asian American. The shooter, a white man. Make no mind, pay no attention to the fact that the criminal himself has said he was not targeting Asian Americans. Rather, he was targeting sex workers as scapegoats for his own sex addiction. The big takeaway from the Biden administration, the Democratic Party, and the mainstream media was that anti-Asian hate was directly linked not just to white supremacy, but the Republican Party. And not just the Republican Party, but to Donald Trump. But is that what the data supports? Again, as I clicked through the research, and because the vast majority of anti-Asian hate crimes occurred in places like California and New York City, I was able to see the actual numbers from police departments like the NYPD. And it might surprise you to learn that more than 80% of the hate crimes against Asian Americans were perpetrated by Black Americans. Now, how does that fit into our understanding of the rising epidemic of white supremacy? How does that tie to the tweets of President Donald Trump? You know, I have a bit of trouble generally with the concept of hate crimes. What is it that makes one murder of a human being more hateful than any other murder? I remember these debates back in criminal law at University of Texas Law School. Isn't every murder full of hate, at least towards the victim? You may have come across this story this past week, but an absolutely horrendous incident took place in my soon-to-be new hometown of Dallas, Texas. This was an incident where an African-American 18-year-old man crept into the home of a lady who had adopted 2 white children. Both of those children were sleeping in a crib. One of them was 4 years old. This 18-year-old predator was caught on a home surveillance camera, creeping in to the children's room and hovering over their crib for several moments before he chooses, I guess, which child he's going to kidnap. He picks up the 4-year-old boy and quickly exits the room. It's not till 10 a.m. the next day that the family realizes 4-year-old is missing. They're afraid he's outside playing, that he's not coming home when called. But rumors had already started to circulate in the neighborhood that a toddler's body was found half a mile away. This 18-year-old African-American man had taken the 4-year-old boy and brutally stabbed him to death and left him on the side of the road. That's the kind of story that will have you leaving a loaded 9mm by your bed and calling the alarm company to make sure your subscription is completely up to date. Was that a hate crime? It's about as hateful of an act as I can imagine. I know if the races were reversed, if it were a white perpetrator and a Black victim, we would be having a massive national conversation about the rise of white supremacy. And this would be Exhibit A in the conversation about the need to do away with hate crime. But would it make the crime any worse if the criminal were white? Do the races of either the criminal or the victim in this story matter? There's hate running through every detail of this story, regardless of the races involved. Yeah, I understand by the definition of the FBI and the Department of Justice what a hate crime is. It's a crime accompanied by the perception of bias inside the heart and mind of the criminal. But for whoever's laying on that cold table in the morgue, or whichever family is mourning the loss of a loved one, the motivations and the biases of the criminal mean little. The hate has reached terminal velocity. It's taken something from them that no racial prism can make worse. So in general, I have trouble with the concept of hate crimes, but that doesn't mean I don't think racism or hate exist. No, they definitely do exist. And I think they're on the rise. Just a few nights ago, some video emerged of diners in Los Angeles, Jewish diners, being attacked by pro-Palestinian protesters. It's violent. They track them down. They beat the Jewish diners. And this is just a week or so after some horrendous video emerged from Toronto, Canada, where pro-Palestinian protesters chased and beat their Jewish neighbors in that country. No, I do believe that hate is on the rise, and I've talked to you about what is causing that hate. The story of humanity is a brutal and violent battle among tribes for supremacy. The story of humanity is seeing each other through the prism of our shallow differences. The story of humanity is tribalism. The United States of America is the great exception. It's a story of people from different backgrounds, different religious beliefs, different ethnicities, uniting together in one tribe under an idea. The idea that we can all be viewed as individuals and that we can all be granted freedoms that would be protected by one another. I know as well as you, we have not lived up to that ideal. But there are those among us now that think that fact, that the United States has a flawed history, undercuts the very idea itself, undercuts the principles on which we were founded. Their response is to revert to tribalism. It's to begin to see each other once again through the prism of our skin color. But that will only lead us to more of what we're seeing in our society. That will only lead to more hate, more violence. The way to solve America's problems is not through re-tribalizing ourselves. It's not to pass hate crime laws. The way to move America forward is to instead live up to the very ideals upon which we were founded. It's to return to the idea that we are once again all individuals to be viewed and judged according to our character and enjoy the freedoms protected by one another. We'll be right back with more of the Will Cain Podcast. Story number 2. I know that I am a know-it-all, but I need your help because if there's one thing I try to pride myself on, it is self-awareness. I know you're probably saying, Will, you sound like the guy who says, I am the most humble person in the world. It's a little bit of an oxymoron to try to be self-aware of your own shortcomings. But I do know what I'm good at and what I'm not. And I've never been able to cook a damn thing. But I want to. I've had a good excuse for years never to invest in figuring out how to do the very manly thing of barbecuing. I've lived in New York City for more than 15 years, and you don't get to just go smoke a brisket on a Saturday afternoon right outside your apartment in New York City. But now that I'm back in Texas, I want in. I think everybody wants in. Don't tell me it's always been like this. This is a growing trend. This is a growing fad. I don't know if it's because of COVID-19 and we're all sitting at home and looking for something to do. I don't know if I'm just reaching the age where me and all my friends are certainly interested in cracking a cold beer and seeing how long this brisket might take. But I'm in. I want to do it. I want to understand it. I want to master it. But I need your help. No, I don't need your help on how to do it. I've already written down, my 3-point bulletin on what a good smoked brisket requires. It requires, number 1, a simple rub, nothing more than salt and pepper. If you want to throw a third mystery ingredient in, just do it lightly, whatever it may be, some kind of butt rub or garlic, but primarily it should be based around salt and pepper. Let the meat do the talking. Number 2, obviously, you go slow and low. And number 3, fat side down. This took some figuring. I've tried it with my friends both ways. Fat side up, fat side down. I understand there's a school of thought, one might suggest a misperception. Fat side up allows the fat as it cooks to drain through the meat, making it juicier. But it doesn't. It doesn't work that way. Instead, fat side down protects the meat from the direct heat of the smoke, allowing it to swirl around and give you a nice, tender, juicy brisket. I know those things. I got that down. Here, though, is what I need your help on. I got to get my own smoker. And I don't know which way to go. If this podcast had the appropriate sponsor yet, then I could go ahead and tell you which smoker to get. But that also gives me the ability to be honest with you that I'm not selling anything here and I don't know what to buy. So here's what I am debating. I could go get a pellet smoker. like everyone else has. I could get a Traeger or one of the many other brands of pellet smokers, and they work. They're awesome. They're almost too easy. They're turnkey. Set the dial, leave it alone, watch it on your phone, come back to perfect meat. But here's the deal. I was thinking, I don't always want to smoke. Sometimes I want to grill too. What if I just want to throw a burger on the grill? Do I have to buy a separate grill to sit beside my pellet smoker? Or can I get this all done in one purchase? And that brought me to the green egg. Now, if I get the green egg, I can smoke, but I can also lift the top and do a direct grill. Now, the green egg's more work, right? I'm going to have to watch my fire. I'm going to have to watch my heat. I'm going to have to manually monitor it. It's not as turnkey, not as easy as the pellet smoker. But is that offset by the benefit of being able to grill on the same device? There's probably some of you saying, just get them both. And maybe that's the answer. But the green egg's pretty good looking. And that brings me to the third option. My father-in-law said, you don't need the green egg. It's too expensive. Get a Komodo Joe. It does the same job for half the price. Others have said, that's nonsense. Malarkey, in the words of Joe Biden. The green egg is worth the price over the Komodo Joe. So I'm lost. What do I do? I need your help. Should I get just a green egg? Should I get a pellet smoker and then I have to buy a cheap Weber grill or whatever to go and sit next to it? Or do I buy the Komodo Joe? At Will Cain on Twitter, see Will Cain on Instagram, Will Cain on Facebook. I need your help. Story number 3. Tim Tebow, my friend Tim Tebow, in the words of Stephen A. Smith, has just signed a contract with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's returning once again to professional sports. He's returning once again to pro football. Now, will Tebow make the Jags? We'll see. Is this just a publicity grab for training camp? We'll see. But there are many very upset today about the fact that Tim Tebow is getting yet another chance. He's had his chance in the NFL, he's had his chance with the New York Mets, and he's had another chance now to catch on with Urban Meyer and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Why? The answer, and by the way, the correct answer, according to many, is privilege. It's just not the kind of privilege that you would suspect. First, can we talk about Tim Tebow for just one moment? Isn't it fascinating that he's such a polarizing figure? Isn't it fascinating that Tim Tebow has become someone, I don't know, I guess, like Skip Bayless or Stephen A. Smith or maybe Will Cain, that you either love or hate? How did Tim Tebow get put into the same bucket as Tucker Carlson? I think I know why. And probably, as you've come to expect from my obsessive-compulsive conversational disorder, I have 4 reasons that Tim Tebow is so loved and hated. First, number 1, he's a good guy, and that's legit. He's a legitimately good guy. Now, I haven't hung out with Tim Tebow. We haven't drank beers while smoking something on a green egg, but I have been around him on a few occasions. And the guy you see behind the scenes is the guy you see on television. He's legitimately nice. People don't like nice guys. Just a few weeks ago, the Dallas Cowboys had their draft. You and I talked about it. And there was a through line to all of the guys that the Cowboys drafted. They had character concerns. Almost every one of them. Fallout with college coaches, transfers, legal accusations. The Cowboys walked away from the Jason Garrett era right kind of guy. I pointed that out on social media, and so many people were like, what do you care, Nancy boy? When we were good in the 90s, we had the White House. We had literal criminals on the team. We're playing football here. We're not trying to put a choir together. And I hear you. I do. I'm not looking to put together the nicest team in the NFL, but I do know that all those same people, should any one of those Dallas Cowboys draft picks get suspended or kicked out of the league after already entering with a red flag, you will crush the Cowboys for having made that mistake. But I think people generally gravitate, at least in sports, and maybe in entertainment at large, to the bad boy. And Tim Tebow's not that. He's goody two-shoes. And for a lot of sports fans, they hate that about Tim Tebow. For others, they love it. Number 2, he's an overachiever. Tebow wasn't supposed to be as good as he was in the NFL. I know where he got drafted, but he always had his doubters. He was never accurate enough. He was never athletic enough. So when he succeeded and took the Denver Broncos to the playoffs and in fact beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, people lost their mind. This wasn't supposed to be happening. I think overachievers are not as liked, quite honestly, as underachievers. I know that doesn't seem intuitive, but think about how often we talk about somebody's talent, how much we elevate them based upon our perception of what we project they should be able to do versus looking at people outperforming our expectations of what they should be able to do. I think being an overachiever forces you into this love or hate relationship with the audience. Number 3, Tim Tebow wears his religion on his sleeve. He is an open Christian. Many, many people love this about Tim Tebow. My nephews, who grew up in Odessa, Texas, all of whom play football, one of them on his way to big-time college football, they loved Tim Tebow growing up. They loved that he was open about his Christianity. And my Odessa nephews were no different than many, many people out there in America because Tebow reflected their values. They saw themselves in him, and they saw him unafraid, unashamed of that faith. Others hated Tim Tebow for that very same reason, and they still do today. And I can't explain this side of the love-hate equation. I truly can't. I don't know what it is that would make someone hate Tim Tebow for being so open about his Christianity, but it is undoubtable that that contributes to much of the hate headed towards Tebow. And then number 4, and this brings us to the conversation this week about the privilege that Tim Tebow enjoys. The reaction in the national media and, in fact, from some NFL players was that Tim Tebow was getting this shot because he was white, that he is benefiting from white privilege. In fact, my friend, Stephen A. Smith, said that very thing just yesterday. But it's not the first time that Stephen A. has accused someone of benefiting from white privilege. I have and would again say this to his face. I remember when Stephen A. said Tony Romo getting a one-day tryout with the Dallas Mavericks just for grins was white privilege. And actually, that's a pretty good barometer, a pretty good example, a pretty good comparison to what's going on today with Tim Tebow. More on that in just a moment. Those that see Tebow getting a tryout with Urban Meyer and the Jacksonville Jaguars as an example of white privilege inevitably gravitate back toward Colin Kaepernick. And Kaepernick is still out of the league. First, Kaepernick has had shots to get back into the NFL. The league put on an unheard of single-person tryout just a couple of years ago to try to get Kaepernick back into the league. He's continuously had high contract demands. He doesn't want to be a backup, and he's making a ton of money being an activist and a martyr. Any rational person should question Kaepernick's desire to come back and grind it out in the NFL. Ultimately, the reason that Colin Kaepernick is not in the league is the same reason that Tim Tebow is getting yet another chance to be in the league. Because while this may be undeserved, I recognize that Tim Tebow is well past his prime, was never a long-term difference-making quarterback in the NFL. I recognize this shot is somewhat undeserved, but I know why he's getting this shot, and it's for the same reason that Kaepernick is not enjoying this privilege. It has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with entertainment. Tebow is getting this shot, maybe this undeserved shot, because he will put butts in seats, because he will generate headlines, because he will draw attention to an entertainment product for the Jacksonville Jaguars training camp. And that's what this is about. Football, professional sports are not so different from Broadway or the movie theater. It's ultimately about entertaining you, putting your butt in their seats and you handing over to them your dollar. The NFL did their risk reward. They did their cost benefit analysis. They each, as individual franchises, made their decisions about whether Kaepernick would be good for business. And each of those 32 teams decided the answer when it came to Kaepernick was no. And when it comes to Tebow, a guy who played college football in Florida, who played for Urban Meyer, who continues to be a national celebrity, the answer as the NFL, at least for one team, when they run through their cost-benefit analysis, when they think about the entertainment product for Tim Tebow, the answer is yes. Tebow is enjoying privilege. It's not white privilege. It's celebrity privilege. That's going to do it for me today. Go watch me tonight. I've got one more Fox News Primetime episode. That's tonight, Friday night, on the Fox News channel at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Go check out last night's show, Thursday night's episode. See if I worked out that monologue, the kinks, the rough draft that I shared with you in the first part of this podcast today. Tell your friends about the Will Cain Podcast, and I'll see you again on Monday.
For the full podcast, go to foxnewspodcast.com.